Hey, that's me. Well, good afternoon. Okay, let's try again. Good afternoon. You guys, are you Swedish? Who's Swedish here? Okay, well, you get away with not responding. Everyone else? The Swedish are the like, oh no, I remember actually I was here a couple of years ago in Belgium, and you guys aren't too active either, huh? But let's try and change that. So welcome. Thank you. There we go. We're starting on a good foot here. Sorry for the delay. We seem to have technical issues. That's because I use a Mac, apparently. So welcome to this talk. This talk is called Prima Donnas. I just thought I'll put a catchy title to get people pissed off and come and say, what the hell are you going to tell me about development? So I want to set your expectations. How many of you have come here thinking that this is a technical talk? Okay, you're in the wrong room, man. I hear they're doing BDD down the hall. The agenda on this talk is, well, not much. This is about me being pissed off, okay? So who's me? I'm a developer, I'm a technical evangelist, and I work at a company called JetBrains. How many of you know JetBrains? Good. How many of you like JetBrains? Okay, if you don't like my talk, don't hold it against the company. No. Well, develop. Oh, if you like my talk. Yes, of course. If you like my talk, buy our products. Today, I didn't get that. Sorry. Today, I'm not a developer. Today, I'm pissed off. This is my baby. He's my third son. And I was taking a picture of him trying to hold this paper when he was 2 months old. And my wife got really pissed off at me because I was harassing him quite a bit. So anyway, that didn't go well. But enough about me. I want to talk about you guys. Now, how many of you know this guy? You see, I'm kind of like, I've done this talk a couple of times before, and I've always done it at a kind of Microsoft or more Microsoft-ish oriented conference. And I put this guy up, and then I realized, like, you know, I'm a fish out of water here because this is mainly a Java conference, right? Any .NET developers here? You're probably scared to put up your hand, I understand. So I'm not really a Java guy. So don't hold that against me either. How many of you like Java? How many of you don't like Java? Okay. You need to come to my talk on Friday, which is Kotlin. Anyway, developers. A misunderstood society. How many developers here? Project managers. Bosses. CEOs. Okay, I need to talk to you later. As my friend puts it, we are a bunch of insecure bandwagon-jumping divas with short attention spans. I think that kind of accurately defines developers. Do you remember these guys? How many of you go back these days? Tape. I don't feel old anymore. This is a developer. I had a sales meeting in Prague, and our sales guy, who's actually at the booth, so you can come and tell him off later, was holding a presentation, and he said, let's talk about developers, and he put this picture up. I said, well, you don't want to know what the developers think of sales, right? So we're developers. This actually, how many of you like Erlang? So this is a movie. It's called Declarative Real-Time Programming with Erlang Now. And these two guys are from that movie. And I'm not joking. If you go to YouTube, you look this up, there's a movie like this. And at some point, you kind of think that John Cleese is going to pop out. And it's a Monty Python sketch. But no, it's real. It's real to the point it's really sad that it's real. But it's real. So there's a movie about developers. How many of you remember this guy? Just trying to... You see, now I do feel old because it's like two people. This was back in the Hollywood days. It was Revenge of the Nerds. This was how they pictured us back then. Of course, now we wear hoodies. Now we're cool, right? Now we rule the world. Do we rule the world? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I just rule the world. Yeah. I'm not really excited about it, yeah. Okay, but let's talk about real developers. These are real developers. This is like you and I. So some of them are my colleagues, others are my friends. One guy just sent me a picture of himself and said, put me in there. I said, okay. Yeah. So just ordinary people, okay? And when it comes to us, you know, I don't like to stereotype, but we do like to stereotype. If we don't stereotype, things don't work. How many of you are enterprise developers? I mean, okay, don't hit me for this, but I am at a Java conference. So enterprise developers are like vanilla ice cream, right? They're the most boring kind of developers ever. You do the most boring jobs ever. And then we have hipsters. This is the new in thing, to be a hipster, which this is what you look like, according to Wikipedia, if you are a hipster. I don't know how many of you, being a Microsoft conference, how many of you have heard of SharePoint? Right, so SharePoint is where development dies. But you get very rich. Because there's very few people that want to do SharePoint. It's all about lists. Now, Microsoft, I take a dig at Microsoft because Microsoft has realized that this hipster thing is catching on. So if you go to the Windows Azure website, which now hosts .NET, hosts Node, hosts Java, everything, you get a picture of this guy, which is as hipster as it gets, with a fake Mac and a blue hat. But that's Microsoft for you, right? Always jumping on the bandwagon. And then in my territory, we have ninja developers. We have people that classify themselves as ninja developers. Any ninja developer out here? That's good. Because I don't know any other profession that actually classifies themselves as ninja developers. Like you get a plumber coming to your house and saying, oh man, I'm a ninja plumber. You know, like, or yeah, I'm a doctor, I'm a ninja doctor. I cut that shit up real nice, you know. No, but we do. We do. And then, of course, there's a Hollywood thing, right? Rock star developers. Any rock stars out here? No. Oh, there's one. There's one up there. It's a rock star developer. And that's brought on by this thing called Twitter. How many of you are on Twitter? Right. So Twitter is good, right? Twitter is useful. I use it for my work. At least that's the excuse that I sleep with at nights. And when you get on Twitter, you start to get followers, and you start to get like 10 followers, 50, 100, 1,000, 2,000. You're kind of thinking like, whoa, people actually listen to me. And then you get like 5,000, 10,000 followers, and you're like, whoa, I must have interesting things to say. I mean, I have everybody, 10,000 followers. Forget for a moment that 9,800 are spam bots. But 10,000 followers are following me. It must be that I have interesting things to say. Right? I mean, it must be. That's why I have so many followers. This is a Twitter account. It's called Big Ben. All it does is go bong, bong, bong. That's all it does. Every hour. It goes bong. And it's got 226,000 followers. So put into perspective the interesting things you have to say. And I took this picture like, I think it was in June. Now it's probably at 480,000. And if you like Big Ben, you'll like the common squirrel, the office chair, and the feral pigeon. But Twitter has given us this micro-celebrity factor. Of course, you can always trust Microsoft for being lame. And I'm not saying that because I'm at a Java conference. I say that at Microsoft conferences as well. This, do you believe what this is? This is a talent show where contestants go to become the next Microsoft employee. As if being an employee wasn't bad enough, now you got to kind of compete for it. I mean, but we kind of lose sense of it, and we think that these things are important, but it's not. It's not really about us. I mean, all this Twitter stuff and all this thing, it's fun. But there are times that we lose sense of what we're doing. And we start to think that we play a central role in what we're doing, as opposed to what we're actually doing. Did I just stand behind there? Let me pose. No. But it's all good fun, right? All we're doing is just having fun, and it's because we care. How many of you care? Okay. How many of you are in this profession because it pays well? SharePoint? No? How many of you are in this profession because you honestly enjoy it? Okay. Before, it never used to pay well. Now we get paid well as well. If you're not getting paid well, you're doing something. So we care about our profession, okay? And it's good. It's good to care about what you're doing. See, back in the old days, we used to just get things done, right? And then a decade ago over or so, they came out with this thing called the Agile Software Manifesto. How many of you know that? Is there anybody in this room that does not know that? And they talked about individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. Everyone knows that. It's like, you know, in school you learn ABC as a software developer, now you learn this manifesto. And we talked about individuals and interactions over processes and tools, right? Remember that? Remember? Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And then they introduced us to this thing called Scrum. How many of you do Scrum? Scrum is good, right? How many of you are happy with Scrum? Yeah. So Scrum, for those that don't know, which is actually maybe a good thing these days, you have these backlogs and you have these sprints, which could be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever you want. And you take items from your backlog and you do these sprints. And you deliver your product after 2 or 4 weeks. And of course, if you don't deliver, well then you have to do these things called retrospectives. And before you start a sprint, you have to do this thing called a sprint planning or backlog item picking. That's a good name, backlog item picking. Of course, so if you've got a week of iteration, you spend 1 day doing backlog planning and another on the Friday seeing where you screwed up. So you got 3 days to do your stuff, out of which on the Wednesday you get a bug come in and it completely disrupts your planned sprint and you're like, oh, what do I do now? What does the book say? Should a bug be a feature? Yeah, it is. So it doesn't work, but you know why it doesn't work? Because you're not certified. If you have failed with Scrum, it's because you're not certified Scrum Master. And everybody knows that to become a master of something, you go on a 2-day course and pay $3,000. Then you're a master. Now, if you're a master, then it should work. No, of course, that's a lie. Everybody knows that. It's because we're time-boxed. It's because we have these 2 weeks iterations or 4 weeks, and we feel like pressured. And then when a bug comes in, we don't know how to handle it. Where should we put this? Should we put it into like a, is it part of the sprint? Do we disrupt the sprint? Do we start a new sprint? Should we change the way we do these plannings? And that's where lean comes in. Lean is the next silver bullet that's going to solve all the problems. How many of you are doing Kanban? Okay. Those that are doing Scrum and it's not working, Kanban is going to solve the problem for you. Because Kanban says instead of creating these iterations and, you know, having a set fixed of items, we'll just pull when we're good and ready. Right? We won't have this time box feeling anymore. We'll just pull and we'll deliver. We'll pull and we'll deliver. And everything is great. We follow this flow and everything is fabulous. Okay? And that's called Kanban. And we have a board. And the board is fantastic. And the first thing we do, and we did this in Scrum as well. I mean, I've done my fair share of Scrum training. And I used to go to companies and I used to say, oh, you want to learn Scrum? Okay, this is Scrum. You have stand-ups, you have unit testing, you have continuous integration, you have good code design, you have these poker planning things, you have these little boards. And we would spend about a week, and then I would go back after 2 months, and I would say, how are you doing? Oh, we're doing great. Look at this. Look at this. We got little magnets with our logo on it for the board. Great. And I've actually written my own software to manage the board. Great. How's everything else going? How's the unit testing and the code, clean code and stuff? Oh, we haven't got to that yet. We're just doing the stand-ups right now. But you kind of, no, we want to take this in steps. I said, but Agile is about responding to change. How many of you have never responded to change? A customer comes and says, here's 50,000 euros, make this change. You're going to say, no, sorry, I don't do that. We all respond to change. It's just how efficient we are at it, right? And that comes along with a series of practices that we need to do. But people start to think more about the process. And they start to think about more the tools. Kanban, right? I mean, even we, at JetBrains, we sell a tool, it's called UTrack. And UTrack offers issue management. First question we get is, oh, does it have a Kanban board? No, oh, I don't need it then. Okay. So now we do. I'll put a little button at the top that says Agile board. There you go. Done. Problem solved. In case you didn't realize, I'm being very ironic here. But we do these things. In fact, I saw some software to the extreme that we take this process and the tools. I've seen software where you will have a board where you enter items, you print things out, you hang it on a physical board. There is a camera that captures that paper, transmits it over the internet to another location where the printer prints it out. Yeah. We even create WIP societies, limited work in progress society. And they play with words. Yes, we can ban. Of course, that was before Obama said, I need another 4 years, right? Because the first 4 years weren't enough to can. Now, the reason that works is that we remove that time box. Okay? But then I start, from this side, from the Scrum, we complain about time boxing. And then we have this other thing called the Pomodoro technique. How many of you know the Pomodoro technique? How many of you use it? So the idea behind the Pomodoro technique, for those that don't know about it, is you get the little tomato. And what you do is you turn this tomato, normally it's 25 minutes. And during this 25 minutes, you basically concentrate on the work you're trying to do. You don't get interrupted. Right? And you do these iterations of 25 minutes. Kind of like boxing you in, right? Giving you that kind of push. Now, this isn't actually new. There was a thing many years ago that, and I always forget, oh yeah, I remember what it was called. It was called discipline. Yeah. Back then, we used to have this thing called discipline. Now we've put our discipline in the hands of a tomato. Right? And of course, if you fail at that, that's because you're not a certified Pomodoro master. Because I am not kidding you, this is actually real. It is real, right? Yes. And you can become part of the Pomodoro world, where you can request for citizenship and you can become a user, reporter, writer, speaker, angel, master, player, or team. We're a team of tomatoes. And we're very efficient at turning egg timers. No. But I got to thinking about this for a moment, and I said, wait, first of all, let's see. From one side, we had Scrum, which people were complaining about, partially about the time boxing. From the other side, we have Pomodoro, which people are saying is great because of the time boxing. So what if we come up with a new thing? What if we take Scrum and Pomodoro and come up with something new, some new technique? And then I thought, if I do this, I can create a tool around it and make millions, right? And a certification course, of course. What would I call this? What name comes to mind? Scrumadoro. That's a good name, although I was too late. You see, there is a Scrumadoro. On the 4th of June of 2012. It's recent. Wait, give it a couple of months, you'll have the certification program. And the point is that we're kind of losing the sense of what we're trying to do. We start to focus so much on the process again, on the process, on the tools, instead of the actual interactions over individuals. I kind of think we use the same approach as the timeshare. How many of you know what timeshare is? So basically in timeshare what happened is that you would buy property, but you wouldn't buy the property, you would buy a week of that property. And then another person would buy another week, it would cost you less, and then once a year, for 1 week, you were entitled to use that property. Of course, they had a limited stock of properties, and they had a limited stock of weeks. What happens when that ran out? Oh, then they would reinvent the system, and they would convert to points, right? And if things don't work, what we do is we create a framework. Here's one. This is the Agile framework. This is like a complete oxymoron. It's like, you can't even understand that. I'm not even going to waste time trying to explain that. And we're losing focus. We have become so focused on the next silver bullet that's going to help us solve our problem, as opposed to trying to solve the problem at hand. And the next best thing, the next promise that's going to come and help us. In fact, we've now started to influence other people to do it. Now we have marketers doing Agile as well. And at some point during this phase, there was a software Agile divorce. So what happened is that there is a conference in the US. How many of you have heard of Agile? There's a conference in the US called the Agile Alliance. And in 2010, there was like 2 sessions focused on code. Everything else was about process and people and resources and well, we don't call them resources, we call them people in Agile. And it was all about that. There was no focus on code. To the point that even, Uncle Bob himself made an issue out of it, and we solved that problem now. It's called Craftsmanship. You're familiar with Craftsmanship? Yeah? You know this guy? Uncle Bob? Who likes Uncle Bob? Good, we love Uncle Bob. And we start to care about our code. We talk about clean code, unit testing, test-driven development, right? We practice these things, yes? But then we start to run into wars. Wait a minute, did I just see you checking some code that doesn't comply with the open-close principle? Yeah. What the hell were you thinking of? And look at that class. That's got more responsibilities than I do. Why would you do something like that? But it's no. You don't want to do that. No. You've got to have clean code, which is good. I love clean code. I'm a proponent of clean code. But we take it too far again. And then we start to have arguments of whether we should apply this or whether or not we should apply this. And then we have blog wars and discussions and things like that. And then we have, of course, the test-driven acronym wars. Test-driven development. How many of you know what that is? Yeah. How many of you know what acceptance test-driven development is? How about behavior-driven development? Okay, the rest of you, go to the next session room. Now, framework-driven development. How many know what that is? You do? So that's the guy that decides that he knows what BDD is and comes up with his own framework. TDD. I do TDD. What's BDD? BDD is instead of it says should. Really? Yeah. Ooh, I like this. Ooh, so I'm doing BDD now. Yes. Okay. I'm going to create my own framework. Yeah. And instead of saying should, I would say something like, it would be extremely nice if it would. Yeah. And then we spill this crap into other technologies and other languages, right? How many of you do JavaScript, right? There's a testing framework in JavaScript called Mocha, which is kind of the next child of Jasmine. And it's got a flag. Do you do TDD? Yes. Use this flag. Do you do BDD? Yes, use this other flag. Nonsense. BDD is about communication. It's about asking the right questions. The layout of the given and the when and the then are about asking those right questions. It's about communicating with your customers. It's about understanding that your code, the tests that you're writing, are specifications of your system. It was never about keywords. And in fact, Dan agrees with me on this, and the reason that Dan North, the guy that coined the term BDD, wrote JBehave was to get rid of the concept of test as a word so that people would stop thinking about things as tests, as opposed to specifications. But yet we think that, no, we need to create a new framework around BDD, throw it up on GitHub, and make millions. Of course, no one does on open source, but anyway. We are losing focus. We get into the acronym wars, we get into the TDD, BDD forks, and instead of concentrating on the issue that we should, we're thinking more about how should I do this. To the point that if you know Zed Shaw, he came up with a website called Programming-MF, which is like, I'm sick of this crap, which he has a point. So tools, frameworks, we concentrate on those. What about interactions? How many of you would agree with communication a prerequisite to interaction? Yeah? You need to be able to communicate, right? You've heard this phrase, communication is key. There's only 2 problems in software, and it's communication, right? What are you doing to improve your communication? What are you doing, apart from saying communication is key? Oh, we always have a communication problem. Oh, in our company, we have a communication problem. Who are you communicating with? With your team members, right? What do they do? The developers. Okay. Who else do you communicate with? My wife, my husband. Really? Yeah, how's that going? She doesn't understand me. It would be really cool if she was a developer. Then things would be great. Right? Have you ever stepped outside of your own zone and tried to communicate with people that are not at your technical level, that are not in your field, and see if you understand them or if they understand you? One of the key points of communication is listening. And often I find people don't listen enough. They say that software developers are introverts, that they don't like to communicate. And how many of you think that that's true? That is not true. That's a myth. We can communicate. If not, go to Hacker News. Yeah, if you go to Hacker News, we're communicating there. In fact, this is just the excerpt of Hacker News. There was 107 comments about whether you should end the line with a semicolon. 142, 221, 136. This was just on one random day, right? Because some guy said that library has a bug because it should have a semicolon, which was Joe Crockford, and the other guy said, oh, you're an idiot, and then all hell broke loose, right? And we're arguing about semicolons. We are very good at communicating, to the point that we love to get our point across. And we will go to all means to argue and debate to make sure that we're right. But sometimes giving in and not having to prove your point works wonders, especially if you're married. What we don't like is small talk. And just to prove the point of how concentrated we are in our own field, the first time I did this talk, one of my friends came up to me later and he said, when you put that slide up, I thought, what the hell does the guy have against the language small talk? Right? I've proved my point, yes? How many of you thought that was small talk? You see? So you ask yourself, are you actually comprehensible? Do you, when you speak to people, do they understand what you're saying? Does that incomprehension reflect on your work? Well, at some point we thought that complex code was the next best thing, right? And then we decided, no, actually writing code that people can understand is even better. And we have complexity in our code, complexity in our user interface. Here's an example. I don't want to point fingers at other people's software. No, I'll point fingers at our own. This is a little thing in UTrack, which is our issue management tracking system, which, by the way, has a little button called Agile Board. And you know what that does? UTrack connects to another tool we have, which is called Team City. And it polls it for changes. That is to set the frequency by which it changes. It polls. So I said to the developer, I'm like, Dimitri, what's that? He's like, well, that's the frequency. I'm like, yeah, but where's the spin button? He's like, no, that's a Quartz Java doc. I'm like, what? He's like, click on the link there. So I click on that link, and I get this weird page with like something similar to regular expressions. And I'm like, what the hell is this? He's like, well, it's very flexible. I'm like, no shit. Really? You know, I will make it my mission in life to go to my grave not learning regular expressions. Okay? I don't want to learn regular expressions. So I said, are we going to change this? Like, why? I said, but he doesn't see that as an issue. It's very flexible, right? It doesn't matter how long you would say it. But then the problem is that some of this frustration comes out at us. We start to shout. It starts to show in our work, right? These idiot customers, they don't understand anything, right? How many of you have been tempted to put something like that in your code? Oh. And this leads to people saying that customers make me nervous and frustrated. I don't have time for feedback right now. Yes, you can be on a product team and the guy's saying to you, the guy that's developing a product saying, I don't have time to deal with feedback. Oh, okay, who are you developing for? Shut up. We don't need stupid customers. Our sales and marketing departments suck. They don't understand us. And the problem is that customer disconnect starts to become dangerous. Because if we don't understand our customers, we always blame them. Customer can't express himself. Oh, can you express yourself? Well, sure I can. It's very logical. You know, it's not like that. It's not logical at all. There is emotions in people. You have to take this into account. And revenue disconnect is dangerous. And I think that developers should be tied to revenue. I don't mean that if a customer gets angry and doesn't buy your product, you get a pay cut. But you should be aware of where the money is coming from. And I often find that a lot of developers don't know, and they don't care. I do my job. I don't care where the money comes from. I get paid at the end of the month. But if you stop listening to customers, if you stop listening to their feedback, how do you know if things are going to continue well? Right? Maybe I should take a cut out of your salary because you're not understanding the customer. Now you maybe start to care. That's not extreme, but this happens a lot because we start to lose focus. We focus on the product, we focus on what we're doing, and we forget about the communication, we forget about the customer, we forget about the revenue, we forget about all this. We're so focused on our product and getting the next version out and getting our feature out and getting the next thing out that we forget about everything else. And then, of course, there's knowledge-driven design. Or, as my friend calls it, CV-driven design, right? Church of Technology Fashion. I picked up this phrase from one of these YouTube videos where there's a Java guy arguing with a Node.js guy, in the cartoon kind of things. And he said, you idiot, you've subscribed to the Church of Technology Fashion. And it's true. I mean, how many of you remember Clipper? Right. Delphi? MongoDB, .NET, Ruby, JavaScript, Node, Rails, CouchDB, Subversion, Git, C#, PHP. Remember Subversion? Remember how it was the best thing ever? Subversion? Nah, it's Git. Remember TFS? How many of you ever worked with TFS? Good, don't. It's from Microsoft. It's called Team Foundation Server. I like to call it Team Frustration Server. That's not an example of a version control. But we go through all of these, VB, NUnit, MS Test, Cucumber, And a lot of times we're succumb to social and peer pressure and commercial pressure to use other technologies. Dude, are you still doing Delphi? Yes. Oh, that is so last century. All the cool kids are doing .NET, Java. Oh, you're doing Java still? No, man, I'm on Ruby. Oh, Ruby rocks. Ruby, Node. Node, TypeScript. What are you doing on Node? That's yesterday. You need to be with the in crowd. Are you still using, can I say Oracle? No, man, it should be MongoDB. Or CouchDB. Those are the good things. Hell yeah, okay, I'll learn it. I'll pick it up. And when we learn these technologies, do we ask the non-technical questions? Do the benefits of learning it outweigh our experience? So we get experience in learning these things, but do we get any benefits for the business? Well, it doesn't matter, I've learned something new. Okay? What about the implementation? How many of you have worked with a Hibernate? A first ever application you did was perfectly implemented with Hibernate? The next one was going to be good, right? And then the next one, right? And you're like, screw this Hibernate, I'm just going with Mongo, right? Where you store and pray. I'm a CouchDB guy. What about the legacy we leave behind? Oh, you're using JUnit? No, now it's JBehave. Oh, no, it's not JBehave, it's NUnit. Oh, no, it's not this, it's not that. We're moving frameworks, moving testing tooling frameworks. What about the poor guy that comes and then says, JUnit, what's that? Let me go to the website. Oh, it's down. Oh, it's dead. Well, it's open source, but you know, when open source dies, it dies. The author moves on to something more interesting. And then you get a 404. And all that legacy code that we leave behind, now a poor guy has to come and adapt to the new unit testing frameworks, or to the new frameworks that we're using. We don't care about that. We just learn and move on. And again, we start to lose focus on what we're doing. Right? We start to become so focused on us as opposed to trying to solve other issues. This is a good framework. I'll just use it. But anyway, that's enough. Did I complain too much? Yeah. Someone says to me, oh, you're not mean enough to us developers. I'm like, well, I still have to do development myself, right? I can't be that mean. But if you think about it, if you look at us for a moment, we have a really, really challenging profession, right? I mean absolutely no disrespect to a factory worker. I could put any profession up on that board. Yeah? This guy goes to work, and every morning, what does he do? He stands on the line and he screws some bolts into some piece of metal. And the next time he does something is exactly the same. And the next day it's the same. And the next month it's the same. And a month after that it's the same. And it's over and over and over and over again. It's the same work. And yet we know we get different challenges every day. We come to work and we see a bug in some legacy code and we say, oh, I got to fix that before I can move on to my shiny new greenfield projects that's using MongoDB with Hibernate and Spring, this and that. Instead of thinking, hey, bug, that's a new challenge. Seriously. It's something different. It's a different thing. We are learning every single day in our profession. And yet we can still complain and moan and say that I'm using old technology and I want to use something new and I'm using legacy and I'm doing this and that, without realizing how fortunate we actually are. I mean, we really do have an amazing profession. If you think about it, I wouldn't compare ourselves to doctors. But there are people in this room that actually save lives through the software they make, in one way or another. There are people in this room or outside this room that actually help people with disabilities to have a better life. And there's not many people in this world that can do that. I saw a session at a conference I was a couple of months ago where they were using this headset, and by reading the brain waves, they were controlling aspects of hardware. We can be part of that. We can be part of things that change the way we live and make things better for other people. And not a lot of professions do that. And yet we still try and think about the downsides of things and the pain points without truly appreciating the power that we have. We have the potential to impact people's lives. We truly do. We can do it in a bad way, of course, as well, like coming up with horrible languages. But we do have ways to impact people's lives. You know, a friend of mine had this talk a couple of months ago, and he was talking about user interfaces and how user interfaces, if you do a nice design of a user interface, it can make the person using your software feel like Superman. Right? I just press a button and it works. When was the last time you pressed a button on something and it worked? It didn't, ever, right? And you can make people feel like Superman, those that are using your software. But in a way, I twisted that and I said, can I borrow this picture? Because he kept throwing this picture off, right? And I said, we can be like that Superman in a sense, because we can help and change people's lives. You know, when they talk about innovation, innovation isn't coming up with a new language. Innovation isn't coming up with a new framework. Innovation is how you can change someone's life to make it better. How you can improve other people's lives. How you can help them in their daily work. This is what it's about. Not a new language or a new framework. And we can have that feeling. Oh. You see, apparently we have this obsession with lolcats as well. How many of you love cats? Looking at cats. We have obsessions with cats and unicorns. So I figured out the cat part because apparently I found this thingy that says that cats are diagnosed as prima donnas. I said, okay, well that makes sense. Right? But I honestly still don't realize what this whole unicorn story is about. Honestly don't know. But anyway, to sum up, it's not about us. So don't push it over the top and don't lose focus. Okay? And there's the best unicorn I could come up with, if you enjoy that. So I'm done. Thank you very much.